One of our most downloaded episodes was the podcast I did back in 2017 with Beau Humphries, and he's back with an update on what he's doing, and he's going to explain how the new credit counseling process is helping people get back on track, and it all starts right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Beau Humphries, welcome back.
Good to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay today.
That's what we want to hear. So let's go through a bit of a background for the listener and the viewer here. You were a guest back on podcast number 147 in June 2017, so over 2.5 years ago. And I think everyone should go back and listen to that podcast or watch it on YouTube. We discussed your entire story, and I want to get to today's topic. But for our new listeners, you got into some issues with gambling. It became an addiction, led to a lot of debt. And back in 2009, you came here to Hoyes Michaelis and filed a consumer proposal to deal with your debts. You paid it off in, how long did it take you to pay it off?
About 3 years.
About 3 years, so early.
Little early.
Because proposals are set up for 5 years. So that was 2012 when you had it paid off. You then became a financial coach. You were doing some other things. You were here on the podcast in 2017. We stayed in touch. And last year you called me up and you said, hey, I want to help people. I want to be a credit counselor. And I said, okay, Beau, that's nice, but you can't just, be a credit counselor. There's a bunch of stuff you got to do. There's courses and training and all the rest of it. And you said, no, that's what I want to do. So I said, okay, well, come on down. And so you enrolled in the course, had no problem passing it, as I recall. And now you are a fully accredited BIA insolvency counselor, and you are helping clients in Hamilton, Burlington, and you'll, travel to Etobicoke, Toronto, some other places as well. So that's the update. Did I pretty much nail the gist of it there?
You got it.
Okay, so everyone's sitting here watching going, okay, so is he still gambling? What's the scoop on that?
No gambling, not for about 9 years. In June, it'll be 9 years.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you addressed the underlying issue. Well, maybe I'm oversimplifying
But
it.
the proposal helped me address the issue, which was the mental health issue, and then I stopped the gambling. Took a while, though.
Yeah, it was not instantaneous.
No, it took a couple more years.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point for people to understand that, okay, I filed my proposal and I get rid of my debts. Okay, well, life doesn't just instantly change.
You don't sit there and do the same thing that you were doing before.
Yeah,
right?
But it takes time. There's a process, and to get back on track.
Yeah.
So that's the background. And again, podcast 147, people can hear your whole story. It's a very interesting and compelling story. So what I want to talk about today is how you and all of our other counselors are helping our clients rebuild their finances with credit counseling. So everyone who files a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal has 2 credit counseling sessions, and we do them one-on-one. So someone would be sitting in a room with you. We don't do them in groups or anything like that. Has to be with an accredited counselor. And because they're part of the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, we call them BIA insolvency counseling sessions.
Sounds official. But everyone kind of refers to them as credit counseling sessions because obviously one of the big areas we talk about is credit. That's kind of what we're here to do. So I want to go through some rapid fire questions because I've already taken up half the show with my longest introduction ever. It was pretty long.
It was pretty long. I know. Both sitting there going, okay, are we going to get to the meat of this show here or what? So first of all, what is required to become a BIA insolvency counselor? So you went through the process last year in 2019. The government has now changed the process a bit. What did you do and what is now required?
So like you said, I couldn't just show up to your office and be like, can I do some counseling now? No matter how much I wanted to at the time or how maybe I felt that I was ready, you have to have some qualifications. So basic, the education one. So if you have high school plus you work for, for example, for 3 years, somebody here could apply to be a counselor if they've been working for you for 3 years, right? Without any other, if you don't have post-secondary. But I had post-secondary, university degree. So that was all I needed for that.
That gets you into the program.
Get me into the door. And also I had to be sponsored by a licensed insolvency trustee. So you kind of have to know one or be able to approach one. So that could be a bottleneck for people too, right? So that's hopefully...
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah, somebody out there going, hey, I'd like to get that. Well, you've got to be sponsored by someone who's already doing it.
Yeah, and because you take full responsibility for everything that I do, sorry about that.
It's true. It's true. True story.
You would probably want to trust me at least a little bit from the start if you didn't know me already. already, right?
Yeah, it's a valid point because you are registered under a LIT's license.
Your license.
My license, I guess, or maybe it's
Billy's license, and then
Hamilton,
your corporate
and then under
license.
the corporate license.
Yeah.
So you're right. The licensed insolvency trustee has to be responsible. So if someone phones me up, and I frankly get this call every couple of weeks, hey, I'd like to get into the business. I'd like to be a counselor.
Sure,
Will you
sure.
sponsor me? Well, I don't know you. I
Yeah.
have to be responsible for you. We got to make sure this works. So that's one of the
So it's
other...
probably somebody who's been working for an
Right.
LIT already who does this most of the time, right?
Yeah, we've got a number here at Hoyes Michaelis who've gone through the program, and you're right. They were working for us for a period of time.
Sure.
You were something of an exception. You managed to weasel your way in the
That's
door
right.
there. So,
and there's no going back now.
no, you're in, man. You're in. So,
So on top of that, I had to take the course. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a new course. I took the first iteration of that course. It's called the Practical Course in Insolvency Counseling. It used to be the Insolvency Counselor's Qualification Course.
Yep, I think
so
that's
just
right.
4 different letters.
Yep,
They just switched it
gotta
around.
make it complicated,
They put
yep.
the new stuff in that we're actually talking about today, which I didn't even know until I started talking to you guys about it. And they're like, that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And so I know about all this stuff that we're actually meeting about today and probably implementing this week.
yeah,
right?
that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about all that, how the rules have changed. And so when you went through the program, the rule was, well, you have to have been involved in 50 counseling sessions.
That's right, yeah.
And they've kind of modified it that, well, you have to, we suggest that you've, observed 10 and you conducted 10 and whatnot. I think here at Hoyes Michaelis, we're still going to make sure you've got lots of experience
That's right.
before we're
They
putting
want
in front.
you to just be sure that I'm good for the job.
Yeah,
That's
which-
basically it.
Yeah, we're here to help people.
Because
And-
you're on the line.
Yep.
And they added a professional development.
Yeah, you've
thing
got to
too.
have a number of hours every 2 years of ongoing professional development, which is good. You want to make sure you're staying up with.
This
with
is
what's
part of
happening.
my.
This is it.
This is part of it right now.
This is it. This
Just
is
so
it.
you know.
And we've got lots of it, so it's not a big deal. And there's other rules. I mean, you've got to be covered by our liability insurance, and you can't have a conflict of interest.
That's right.
Which means you can't be doing insolvency counseling if you're also selling loans or credit rebuilding
That's right.
services or acting as a debt consultant or loan intermediary or referral guy or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and that's why all of our credit counselors work for Hoyes Michaelis. They're
Yeah.
not also working for that guy who's doing loans on the side.
And that's a big deal, right? Because it used to not be that way, and this is a big change. And I came in just at the right time
and
for that.
whether there are some places that are still like that or not, I don't know. But you can always tell when you call up someone and you're, in financial trouble. If they say, "Okay, here's my upfront fee. It's a couple
Yeah.
$1,000, and then I'm going to refer you to someone." Yeah, you're at the wrong place.
That's right, and we just want people to get help, but we don't you don't have to come here, but just we don't want you to go to the bad guys because
Well,
there are some bad
There
people
are,
out there.
and I mean, I get it. Everyone wants to make money, but there are no upfront fees when you come to see us
right.
because that's the law. Plus, why would we
Yeah.
charge you money if we don't know where we can help you? So if you file a consumer proposal with us, the first payment you make is after the proposal is filed,
Yeah, exactly.
not before.
And just because people get confused about this, all of the fees are included in the number you agree upon anyway. Everybody's fees, the government fees, our fees. The money goes to the creditors, one big number. So there's no actual additional fees. People get sort of
That's a
tied
good
up in
point.
those semantics, but we get paid, yeah, but it's not anything that you pay out of pocket.
Yeah, if the proposal is $300 a month,
Yeah.
that's what you're paying, and
Yeah.
that includes our fees, the government fees, and everything. So
Because I went through it myself, I feel like I need to really iterate that because that's something that I hear a lot. Like it's going to cost you money to do a proposal, and that's so not true.
yeah, and the whole point of a proposal is I owe this much,
You're saving money.
$60,000, and we
Yeah.
offer a proposal of $20,000 or whatever. I mean, every case is different. So yeah, you're saving a huge
So
amount of
you're
money.
always going to save money
That's
no
the whole
matter how
point.
much it
and
is.
there's no interest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's a massive saving. So okay, now I already said that if you file a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal, you automatically receive 2 BIA insolvency counseling sessions.
That's right.
And effective January 31st, 2020, the federal government updated what we cover in those sessions. People are watching this after that date. And anyone who wants to get into all the details of that, if you really are interested in government directives, you can go to the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy's website, type in Directive 1R5, and you can read all the specific rules. I'll put a link to it in the notes on YouTube. But there are 5 areas that we would typically address in a credit counseling session: budgeting, achieving financial goals, spending habits, responsible use of credit, and anything else that is appropriate. Now, I've got some theories on this. You probably have some theories
Sure.
on this too. So let's talk about practically how this works. Now, even though budgeting is first on that list, I personally think goals should be first. Now, of course, frequent listeners to this podcast are going, hey, you don't like goals, man. We heard podcast 227 where you're more of a systems guy than a goals guy. And I get it. Over 7,000 of you have already watched that podcast, so I know you all know where I'm coming from. But how do you discuss that whole concept then? Maybe it's not goals, maybe it's systems. What's your mindset when you're meeting with someone with respect to that?
Yeah, so for goals, and I think I am agreeing with you that goals should come first, because then we can, the budget sometimes is too early anyway in the first session to talk about it, right? Like ultimately we do have to have a copy of a budget by the end of the second session, but I'm leaning towards, let's move to the second one, because then they have time, a couple of months, 3 months, maybe 4 months to do a budget, right? Or to see how are they living on cash, right? No credit, right?
Well, and I'll interrupt you there just to emphasize the point. The first credit counseling session that occurs is after you file.
That's right.
And it happens it has to be at least 10 days since you filed and before 90 days, which is a bit of a change to the way it used to be. And then the second session has to be at least 30 days after the first one and before your procedure is finished.
Yeah.
So you're right. We're not having this discussion the day after you sign. I mean, obviously, before we meet with you, we're going through your budget to see how much money you've got and whether you can afford a proposal or whatever.
But that's with you still having credit payments probably too, right?
And having not yet sat down and gone through, what are my goals? Where can I be cutting back? What's my job situation going to be? All of that sort of thing. So back to the question then, how do you address this whole idea of goals, where I want to go?
Yeah, so goals, so you're talking about systems versus goals. And I think it's possible that these people who come in and have trouble, like myself, have had systems, right, before, like general system, like I want to save money to do this or that, right, and set up a system, but maybe that didn't work so well for them. So in this case, and especially because we have to keep track of, like, say, 3 financial goals on paper and save it in our files, it's good for them to have something specific to work towards in this case. I mean, one of the goals should be building an emergency fund. That's
saving money.
That's number one,
yep,
right?
I agree.
That's usually the priority number one, right? And, I'll talk about somebody from yesterday. She came in and we talked about, so let's talk about your goals. Like, so you got some cash flow now. Let's do the emergency fund, build some savings, but then what about after that? She's like, I want to buy a house. I want to be financially independent. And we started talking a little more about stuff. It turns out that even though it's late in life, she might want to go to med school, right? She's a nurse. She might want to go to med school. And so we talked about that a little more. We realized it's not too late, right? I mean, you can go. I know people, because my wife's in med school, various ages.
You know quite a bit about med school.
I do. There's people who are from age of 20 to 50 or 50 plus, right, in there. And so now she's like kind of brightened up, and her new goal is now med school. And at the end, we confirmed that med school is now goal before house, right? Because once she's a doctor, she can more easily get a house.
House won't be an issue,
right? So it's like, let's talk about you, what do you want to be? Really, you kind of came up with that concept. What do you want to be? Where do you want your life to go? Because it really is this fresh start. We say fresh start all the time. That's a thing on the website, but it's so true. You have to have a new beginning here, because you can't keep doing what you were doing.
You can't keep doing what you were doing. And you come in to see us and you got a bunch of debt, and that becomes, that's your priority, because my wages are going to be garnished if I don't figure this out.
That's right.
But once the debt's taken care of, you know what? I can actually do anything. And so one of the things I talk to a lot of my clients about is, so what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working at the factory now, but what I'd really like to do is work with kids, work with animals.
I want to be a police officer.
Like to be, something totally different than what I'm doing. Well, you know what? Now's the time. Your debts are under control. We've done the proposal, so you don't have to worry about that. You got a payment you got to make, but any kind of job is probably going to be able to achieve those goals, or maybe you got to wait till the payments are done or whatever. Yeah. But you don't have to worry about that $2,000 a month in minimum payments you were trying to make before.
And whatever it is, there is an end game, right? There's an end to this. 5 years for a proposal, whatever it is for your bankruptcy, if you're in it first time or second time, or if you're in surplus, it depends. But there is, you know when your last payment is going to be.
Yeah, no proposal lasts for 20 years.
No, exactly.
Whereas when you look at your credit card statement, it says if you keep making the minimum payments, it'll last for 100 years. So there's obviously an end to it.
And just to clarify, if you want to be a police officer, for example, do you know, does the insolvency have to be cleared from your report?
No. I've done insolvencies for a lot of police officers. Military is the other one.
Yeah.
What they want to see is that you have a plan.
Okay. Very
So I've had people come in and they go, yeah, I want to join the police force or the military, but they won't let me because I've got all this
got
debt.
this on file.
But if I file a proposal and it's accepted by the creditors, well, now we know I've got this one monthly payment, which my military salary, my police officer salary will absolutely cover.
Yeah, okay.
And so then they're able to qualify. So no, you don't have to be done the process.
Yeah, okay.
But you have to have a plan in place. And
That's
so
good.
what I tell everyone is, talk to the recruiter, because every police force, military is different. But find out what their requirements are.
Yeah, find out what it specifically is. Because I think some people just go in thinking, now my life is over. I can't do this. I think you have to explore it in detail.
Yeah,
right?
and that's where the whole goals thing comes in. And I mean, like I say, I'm more of a systems guy. So if I want to buy a house, well, okay, you're going to need a down payment, which goes back to savings, which you and I both agree is number one.
Yeah.
So from a systems point of view, let's see what we can do to keep your expenses as low as possible and to keep your income as high as possible.
Yes.
So on the expense front, it might be, you know what, instead of eating out every night, I'm going to learn to cook. That's going to save me money. That'll put money in the bank. And whether I use that money to buy a house or to go to school, doesn't really matter. When you got money piled up, life is a lot easier. You got a lot more doors open to you.
I think you're right, but we need to combine that with some specific goals, because for a lot of people, a big bucket of money, if with no specific purpose, they don't know where it ends.
Yeah,
they might not know what to do with it once it hits a certain number.
Right, and so from a systems point of view, if what I wanted to do was, I don't know, save for school, let's say. Then my recommendation would be, let's set up a vehicle to do that. Maybe it's a TFSA, maybe it's a savings account, maybe it's a whatever it is. And every paycheck, you're automatically putting money into that.
That's right.
You don't even see it. To me, that's a system. System means set it and forget it. I don't have to think about it. As opposed to every month, okay, I got my paycheck. Let me use the mental energy to decide where it's going. That's kind of be hard, because you know what? It's cold out. I need a new coat. I need some. I want to go on a vacation, whatever. If I've already set up the plan in advance, then I don't have to worry about it. But this is a perfect example of the kind of things we talk about at a credit counseling session. Right. There is no, we have to address these three issues. This is the way. It's like, let's talk. We meet with people, and you and I both have an accounting background. I look more like an accountant than Beau does, but for those of you watching on the video, you'll know what I mean. But we're both, at our core numbers guys, I would say.
Excel
we know how to work
people.
Excel, exactly. So the numbers come easier to us. We see things in terms of numbers. Well, that's not how real life works.
No.
It's not how real life works at all.
No.
So we talk to our clients and say, well, where is your brain at? And I get some people who come in with beautiful spreadsheets.
Sure.
Fantastic. Let's go the spreadsheet route then. I had a lady yesterday who came in with 5 scraps of paper.
Okay.
And she had written down all her expenses. It was the second counseling session I was doing. And she said, I've written it all down, and I know, and her issue was she has 5 different jobs.
Oh, wow.
5 different part-time jobs.
Okay.
And so I get paid on this one every 2 weeks, and this one twice a month, and this one once a week. And I said, okay, I can see it's pretty hard to keep track of all the money.
That's a lot to juggle.
So her biggest expense every month is rent, not surprisingly. So what's my system for that? Well, there's no right answer to that.
No.
She's not a spreadsheet person. She's a piece of paper person.
Whatever works for you.
Whatever works for her. So I said, you know what I would do? Since you're already banking at that bank that has free bank accounts, why not set up a separate one called rent?
Sure.
And every week put money into it from all your various paychecks, so that by the end of the month, next month's rent is already there, and your landlord can take it out whenever you want.
That's right.
Rather than at the end of the month having to come up with the money. Yeah, okay, that's work.
So we get input from them to try to help them develop a system that works for them. We need the feedback loop going on here so that we can help them.
Yeah, we're not telling them this is how you have to do it. No. We're telling them, how does your brain work? Let's talk about that and come up with a solution that's right for you.
The only thing you have to do is actually show up at the 2 sessions. That's what you got to do.
Well, and tell us, talk.
And talk to us,
that's what we're there for.
Don't sit there in silence.
Yep, and somebody else, I would have given a completely different perspective on things. But for her, I think that was the way it needed to be.
And which is why when people are either reluctant to come or feel intimidated, or I've had situations even lately where they only want to talk to the trustee, right? Which is totally fine, right? Because you help them go through this process, and now I'm some new person, right?
Yep.
So I understand that, but the idea is we're all on the same team. I know everything about this person already, so because it's on the screen,
We've
right?
got notes.
We have all the notes and we have everything. So I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, and like that's the whole idea. It's like you come in, we're here to help. I'm not here to judge you, and I've been through it, so I can't judge you.
You absolutely understand what they're going through. What I will do when I first meet with someone, even before they've signed up, is I'll do a lot of counseling with them then. Let's see what your issues are.
Of course.
So by the time it gets to the first or second counseling, I've already given them my perspective on it. Okay. It's a good idea to now talk to someone with a different perspective.
Bring in somebody else.
So, okay, Beau's got a different take on this. And, maybe I was really pushing the spreadsheet because that's what I like. And Beau goes, yeah, no, I think for you, here's a different way to go with it. Now, not everybody, but virtually everybody I talk to says, okay, now that I've got my debt under control, in the future, I want to do something. You already gave some examples. I want to buy a house. I want to buy a car. And maybe it's, no, I don't want to do any of those things, but I want to rent a better apartment than what I've got. And I know they're going to do a credit check on me. So I want to improve my credit so that I've got a better chance of, renting an apartment, getting a job, whatever it is. So what advice do you give people with respect to using credit wisely, rebuilding credit, all of those kinds of things?
So the first thing I do is get them to agree that they're never going to carry a balance on a credit card ever again.
Yep.
Because we're fine with people getting credit cards again, because as you're suggesting, they need a revolving piece of credit, like a credit card or a line of credit, to be able to rebuild. That's what the banks want to see. If you want to get a good car loan rate or a mortgage rate, right? Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of people's goals are, right? So, we recommend they get a secured credit card, but I only recommend it if I think they're not going to have trouble.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
It's not a blanket recommendation.
No, it is not.
I get some people who say, you know what, I never want to have any credit. I'm 60 years old. I'm on a pension.
They don't need it.
I don't need it.
So let's not even go there.
Don't go there then.
Right?
Absolutely right.
And also, we need them to have some savings first, because to get a secured credit card, you have to give someone, let's just say $500.
That's what security means.
That's the ones we recommend, right?
Yep.
And the one with no fee that we recommend is the one that I would like you to have.
Yep.
It's got high interest, but we don't care about that
because you're paying every month.
That's right. So you have to have money in the bank. Let's say it's a couple grand that makes you feel comfortable for emergencies. Then the next 500 that comes in, okay, now you can send it to the company, get your secured card, and start rebuilding. Put an automatic bill payment on there. Maybe you pay your Rogers. Sorry, I shouldn't say Rogers.
They can sponsor this show if they want, if they're listening. Yeah.
I should say all of them now, right?
Yeah.
Pay your a utility or phone bill automatically. Maybe you do it already from your bank account. So just put the credit card in the middle and it's automatic. Or pay for gas or pay for groceries, but pay it off right away.
Yep.
And then you're rebuilding your credit. But the idea here is you're not using it for debt. You're using it as a tool for rebuilding.
And that's the key. We're looking at the big picture here. This is not, let's see if we can get your credit score as high as possible so you can get into as much debt. It's, I have this goal. Buy a house, get a car, go to school, whatever. What do we need to do to work towards that? What's the system we need to work towards that? And that's what we're talking about. Do you also get into a discussion about spending habits then? Because that's the other side of the coin, right? I mean, in order to have savings, that means an excess. You either have to have more income or less expenses. That's the only way you generate extra cash flow. What discussions do you have with people on that front?
Yeah, so a lot of people that come in, they just seem to be like maybe 1 month behind in cash flow, right? And so this is the perfect time right now where you don't have any credit as a backup. You're having to live on cash. Let's just like sort of bring everything down a little bit, even like what's your base level so we can figure out what that is and then go from there. Maybe you can save a little bit, get ahead of yourself. Maybe like look at all of your different places where you spend. It is hard to bring a lot of expenses down further. Maybe they've already done that with you and the consult and the sign up already, right? Or before they even came in, right? But we talk about, budgeting in terms of food savings apps like price matching is a big thing. We spend so much on groceries, right? Yep. Do you need to be living where you're living? And a lot of people say, yeah, I mean, I have no choice. I got 2 kids. This is where I need to stay, right? But we go through all the things and just kind of explore them in detail. Hey, can you budge on this? Maybe something they haven't thought of. So try to bring that down a little bit. But really, in terms of maybe they don't have a spending problem. Maybe that wasn't their thing. But if they did have a spending problem, then yeah, let's hold off on that credit card for a bit and just realize that if you spend money on this one thing, you don't have it for food or rent. So it's like this is kind of where the budget does come in, and the tracking is important at this point.
See how he brought it back to budgeting? That was fantastic.
It's important.
But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
But the budgeting isn't necessarily the starting point. It's looking at everything.
Yes.
And I do believe, and I'm not a fan of budgeting because I think it's something that people just don't do.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do believe you have to know where your money goes.
That's right. So let's say tracking.
Tracking, you have to. And there's tons of different ways to do it. You can, pay for everything with your debit card, so it's all on your phone.
That's
you know
right.
where the money's going. You can use an app. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it.
Yeah, the websites are aggregators that do it automatically are great.
And,
right?
Spreadsheets or whatever. And I definitely recommend doing that for a month or two. If you're not going to do it for your whole life, do it for a month or two. I met with a person last week, and when we looked at the numbers, he said, boy, I didn't realize I was spending $800 a month on food.
That's right.
Because when I go to the grocery store, I only spend $100, but we'll eat out a few times a week. We'll order in. He lives downtown, so it's easy to do. And he said, boy, I could save a huge amount of money by, cooking at home. So now that takes some planning. You've actually got to have food at home. So what he's now doing is planning out his meals on the weekend and doing a bunch of cooking with his wife on the weekend.
That's perfect.
Boom. Now we've got meals set. We don't have to think about what we're eating because, it's Tuesday night and we're having the salmon tonight. So you've already got it locked in. And not only is he eating better, he told me he'd lost 5 or 6
right.
pounds.
The bonuses.
Because I'm not eating all the crap, but it's actually, kind of fun. And, we've got a plan in place. So when we get home from work, and we both work long hours and all the rest of it, when we get home from work, though, we know what we're making. It's already pre-done.
It's ready to go.
So those are the kind of things we talk about that are not just numbers. They're real life.
That's the best. The best thing is when people come in, say even in their first session, and they are excited about all the savings that they've had and they want to share it with us. And they're actually, like you said, they're having fun doing this, and they never thought about it before. So it's like not everybody feels this way about finances. A lot of people, they get sick about finances still, no matter, right? And I don't blame them, right? It's boring stuff, right? We're accountants, we love it, but a lot of people don't. But when they come in, they're excited. That's great. And so so just do whatever you can in that respect. But you have to be aware of it first. And if you're aware of it and you're like, I spend $800 on food. I love steak. I want to eat steak all the time. Great. I can live in a place for $600 a month. Then those are the trade-offs. You're allowed to do that. It's your life, right?
You can only spend a loony once.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the point you're making.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to eat steak every night, fantastic. But
Make
you
your
can't
choice.
also do all of these other things.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you're based out of Hamilton. I'm based out of Toronto. I see clients in Toronto all the time. You're more likely to be able to get around on the bus or the subway or whatever. Hey, if you can avoid having a car, fantastic.
It's a huge expense. Oh, man.
Massive amount of money. I mean, we're recording this in our studio in Kitchener today. Well, more people are likely to have a car in Kitchener because, if you're, coming from Elmira into Kitchener every day, there is no subway you can take, so a car becomes more important. But you got to evaluate what's important.
That's right.
Because you got to decide where to spend the money.
And this is the time to do it. But like between the first and the second counseling session, I think is a great time to just sort of do an audit of your own expenses, of your life. It's why you're here, right? Why you came in the door in the first place.
Well, and look at this. You mentioned the term fresh start. That's exactly what this is.
Mm-hmm.
I've got an opportunity. People come in, and you've been in this situation many times where someone comes in. One of the reasons for their financial difficulty is they got laid off.
That's right.
Well, that isn't good. Nobody likes to get laid off. I don't have an income. But the plus side is you don't have a job.
Yeah.
The world is now open to you.
Mm-hmm. Fresh start.
Fresh start. So, I've always wanted to do something different. I never would have quit my job to go back to school or get retraining or go into a different field. But since they made that decision for me, fantastic. And so I spend a lot of time at counseling sessions talking about things like jobs. Mm-hmm. So even though it wasn't one of those 5 things on the list, well, now's the time. Why don't we talk about that?
What do you want? What's like the dream job? Maybe like I think you said this in a recent podcast, like maybe it takes too long to become an engineer or whatever at this point in your life, but there are things you can do, right? I drove Uber the last couple of years while I was off, right? Just for some side income. There are so many things like that, right?
Yeah, and we see that in Toronto especially, all the side hustles. People doing Uber Eats. I mean, guys who live downtown who have a bicycle. They
Shopping
can do
for
Uber
groceries for people, assembling IKEA furniture. There are so many side hustles.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And again, if you're out of work, that's a perfect thing to do. But even if you have a job, well, this is a way to pick up a few extra bucks.
To get that extra month that you're always behind.
And now you're ahead.
Which is a way to pay for payday loans too, which
absolutely.
Of course I have to mention this in honor of Ted.
Yes, that's right.
In this episode.
Yeah, who is not a fan of payday loans. And if you can get ahead, and I think you're absolutely right, the savings and then getting ahead, that makes everything so much easier. One of the ladies I met with yesterday was a bit behind on her rent, but she had just gotten paid for a project she's done. And one of her questions for me, what should I do with this money?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I said. Get caught up on rent, put next month's rent in the bank already, and then you're always a little bit ahead.
That's right.
You're not playing catch up. It's so much easier.
And that's where we come in. It's like the golden question, like, what should I do with this money? We're there ready with all of the things that could possibly help. If you don't know, we can tell you.
And that's
right?
that's what we're there for. So to conclude,
yes.
what final advice do you have for people? What goes on in a typical counseling session that we haven't talked about? What final points do you want to hit on?
Yeah, so we have to cover all the things that are on that list, but the last thing on the list is whatever else is appropriate, right? And a lot of it is just trying to get to what caused this to happen and what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And a lot of times it's an incident that is not really a repeatable thing. Someone got sick, someone had a divorce, right? I mean, a lot of these things happen, lose your job. But what you can do going forward is maybe you didn't have a lot of savings. Well, build that up, right? Maybe you had existing debt when all this happened. Well, you're not going to have that now. So if it does happen again, you're not going to have the debt and you're going to have the savings, hopefully enough to kind of tide you over. And then you don't have to come in and see us. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, because we're trying to get at the underlying issues as well.
Because otherwise you'll be back in this office if you keep doing what you're doing. And we don't want that at all.
We don't want that. And yet we've had lots of clients over the years, you're a prime example, who later on it's like, well, I wasn't happy that I went through a proposal, but you know what? Things are really good now.
It changed everything for me. It gave me the breathing room, which is what people say all the time. They just come in and they just like relieved, right? Sure, they got to rebuild. They got some, hard looking to do with their finances, but they don't have $55,000 in debt anymore and $1,000 a month to pay. Maybe it's $300 now. Yeah. And they're in a better place and they can now look at okay, so what happened? Right? Really.
And how do we recover from that? And how do we move forward? And
Yeah.
I do the initial meeting with people where we kind of work out the plan. I do the signing where we go through all the documents and everything. And then I do the credit counseling sessions as well. I think the credit counseling sessions are, in many respects, the most fun.
Sure.
Because it's a blank slate.
Well, that's it. We're starting fresh. They come into you for sign up or consults. And as you've described many times, shoulders down.
Yep.
They're ashamed. There's so much stigma still about insolvency. Once we explain everything to them and then you sign them up and you file and they have a month maybe of living without that debt, nobody's calling, everything's taken care of, they're fresh again. And you're right. So they come into counseling and they're ready to talk about fresh start and they're inspired.
Yep. And they... yesterday when the lady left, she said, "Oh, I'm glad I came in.
Yeah.
I'm glad I came in today.
That's all that I want."
Yep. And I go, perfect. We've done our job.
A little bit of value.
Yep.
Something better than when you came in.
Yeah.
Right?
And if we can do that, then it's all good.
That's what it is.
Excellent, Beau. That's a great place to end it.
Perfect.
Beau Humphries, who was a client of Hoyes Michaelis many years ago and is now a BIA insolvency counselor, seeing our clients in Hamilton, Burlington, other places as well. I will put a link in the show notes to track Beau down. Easiest way to do it is go to Hoyes.com and type in Beau, B-E-A-U. You're the only guy working here named Beau.
Perfect.
So it's easy to find. You can follow him on Twitter and see what he's up to. Beau, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Beau Humphries, ladies and gentlemen. That is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.